Liberty, Missouri, 1876. The summer heat bore down mercilessly on the town square as Emma Wilson stood trembling on the makeshift auction platform. At 19, with copper hair cascading down her shoulders and eyes that reflected the blue Missouri sky, she had never imagined ending up here, being sold like cattle to pay her father's debts. 3 months earlier, her father had hanged himself in the barn after the bank foreclosed on their farm. The drought had been unforgiving, but the bank had been crueler. Now, with no family left and nowhere to go, Emma faced the indignity of being auctioned off as an indentured servant, a thinly veiled euphemism. Everyone understood. Sheriff William Blackwood stood at the front of the gathered crowd, his badge gleaming in the sunlight, his eyes never leaving Emma. At 45, with a reputation for brutality and corruption, Blackwood had made his intentions clear. "Folks, we commence with the auction to satisfy the remaining debts of the late Thomas Wilson," announced Jasper Hayes, the bank's representative. "We start the bidding for 7 years of service from his daughter at $50. Emma's hands were bound loosely with rope, more for show than necessity. She wouldn't run. There was nowhere to go. The crowd murmured, some with pity, others with interest. $50, called a rancher from the back. 75, countered another voice. Sheriff Blackwood stepped forward, his spurs jingling. $100, he said, a smile spreading across his weather-beaten face. 150, came a voice from the saloon owner, known for his brothel. In the back rooms. Emma closed her eyes, fighting back tears. This was what her life had come to, being bid on by men who saw her as property. $200, Blackwood called, his voice carrying an edge that silenced other bidders. Hayes looked around. 200 going once. Suddenly, commotion erupted at the edge of the square. 5 riders appeared, dust billowing behind them. The lead rider, a man with a broad-brimmed hat, pulled low and a blue bandana covering his face, rode directly toward the platform. 200 going twice. Hayes continued nervously. The lead rider pulled up sharply before the platform, his horse rearing dramatically. With practiced ease, he drew 2 revolvers and fired into the air. The crowd scattered in panic. "This auction is finished," he declared, his voice carrying across the square. Sheriff Blackwood's hand moved to his gun. "James, you're making a mistake." The rider's eyes narrowed above his bandana. "The mistake was yours, thinking you could buy this girl." 2 of the riders flanked the crowd, keeping them at bay, while another covered the sheriff. The leader holstered 1 gun and extended his hand to Emma. "Miss, if you'd prefer not to be sold today, I suggest you take my hand." Emma hesitated only briefly before grasping his gloved hand. He pulled her effortlessly onto his horse. "This is kidnapping, James," Blackwood shouted. "I'll hunt you down for this." "It's not kidnapping to free someone from slavery," Jesse James replied, loud enough for all to hear. "And it's not the first time I've had to teach you about justice, Blackwood." With Emma holding tightly to his waist, Jesse wheeled his horse around. "Ladies and gentlemen, remember what you saw here today. Some debts can't be paid by selling human flesh." As they galloped away, Emma glimpsed Sheriff Blackwood's face, contorted with rage. She knew this wasn't over, it had only just begun. The abandoned hunting cabin sat nestled in the dense woods 20 miles outside Liberty. Inside, Emma sat wrapped in a blanket by the fire, watching Jesse James pace the worn wooden floor. His famous face, now uncovered, looked younger than the wanted posters suggested. -30-3 with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "Why?" Emma finally asked, breaking the silence. "Why risk everything for a stranger?" Jesse stopped pacing and studied her. "Your father was Thomas Wilson?" She nodded. "He rode with Quantrill's raiders during the war, same as my brother Frank and me. He saved Frank's life at Lawrence." Jesse sat across from her. "But that's not the only reason." What Blackwood and those bankers are doing, selling people to cover debts, it ain't right. They're worse thieves than I ever was. Cole Younger, Jesse's lieutenant, entered with wood for the fire. They're still searching the North Road. We're safe here for now. Emma's fingers nervously traced the rim of her tin cup. What happens to me now? I have nothing, no home, no family. You have choices, Jesse said firmly. More than you had this morning. Emma met his gaze. Sheriff Blackwood won't stop. He's wanted me since I turned 16. My father kept him away, but now. Blackwood's been using that badge to terrorize folks for years, Cole interjected. Especially women without protection. I know, Emma whispered. 3 girls from my church disappeared after their families lost their farms. They say they went east for work, but nobody believes that. Jesse and Cole exchanged dark looks. Emma, Jesse said, leaning forward, what? Do you know about your father's debts? The drought ruined us, but something wasn't right. The bank suddenly demanded payment on loans he thought were settled years ago. They had papers he claimed he never signed. Jesse nodded. The Clay County Bank has been doing this all across the county. They forge signatures, change terms, then seize properties when folks can't pay. How do you know this? Emma asked. Because we've been watching them. That land they're stealing? The railroad's paying top dollar for it next spring. Emma stood suddenly. Then my father died for nothing for their greed. Not for nothing, Jesse said quietly. Not if we can prove what they're doing. Your father kept records, didn't he? A cautious man like Thomas Wilson would have. Emma's eyes widened. His journal, he wrote everything down. It's hidden in the root cellar at our farm. Jesse grinned. That journal could expose them all, the bank, the railroad men, even Blackwood. The farm's being watched, Cole warned. Then we'll need a distraction, Jesse replied. He turned to Emma. This is your choice. You can go to my cousins in Kansas, start a new life away from here, or you can help us bring down the men who destroyed your father. Emma straightened her shoulders, a determination flickering in her eyes that reminded Jesse of her father. I want justice, she said firmly. I want them to pay for what they did. Jesse nodded, respect evident in his expression. Then we start tonight. But understand this path is dangerous. My life was sold on an auction block today, Mr. James. I'm already acquainted with danger. Outside, the light faded as a storm rolled in from the west, thunder echoing through the trees like distant gunfire. Fitting backdrop for the war they were about to wage. The rain had turned the road to mud by nightfall. Emma, dressed in men's clothing borrowed from the youngest member of Jesse's gang, rode alongside Jesse toward her former home. The familiar silhouette of the Wilson farmhouse appeared on the woolly horizon, dark and abandoned. 2 men watching the front, probably another out back. Jesse whispered as they tied their horses in a copse of trees a quarter-mile away. There's another way in, Emma said. Follow me. She led him through the wet underbrush to a small creek that ran behind the property. They waded through the shallow water to avoid leaving tracks. Pa built a drainage tunnel during the floods. Of 68, Emma explained. It leads straight to the root cellar. The narrow tunnel, barely wide enough for Jesse's shoulders, emerged inside the damp earth of the cellar. Emma felt her way to a familiar shelf, her fingers tracing the rough wood until they found a loose brick in the wall. Here, she whispered, pulling out a leather-bound journal. This is everything. Jesse struck a match, illuminating the pages filled with meticulous handwriting. Your father documented every transaction, every conversation. He never trusted banks after the war, Emma said. Said a man's only true possessions were what he could hold in his hands. A sudden noise above made them freeze. Footsteps creaked. Across the kitchen floor. Someone's inside, Jesse breathed, extinguishing the match. They waited in tense silence until the footsteps receded. I need to see something, Emma whispered, moving toward the cellar steps. Emma, wait, but she was already ascending, quiet as a ghost. Jesse cursed under his breath and followed. The farmhouse stood eerily empty, Emma's childhood home stripped of nearly everything. In her father's study, she ran her fingers along the edge of his desk, the one item too heavy for the bank to bother. Removing. What are we looking for? Jesse asked. This. Emma pressed a hidden catch, revealing a small compartment. Inside lay a stack of official-looking papers. The original loan documents. Pi always kept copies. Jesse examined them quickly. These show completely different terms than what the bank claimed he owed. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Jesse drew his pistol as the door swung open. Sheriff Blackwood stood in the doorway, his gun already drawn. Well, the lost little lamb returns, and with the notorious Jesse James as her shepherd. Blackwood, Jesse acknowledged calmly, though his pistol remained steady. You're smarter than I gave you credit for, Emma, Blackwood said. But coming back here was a mistake. The mistake was thinking I'd let men like you destroy everything my father built. Emma replied, her voice stronger than she felt. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. Your father was a fool who didn't understand progress. This land has better uses than growing corn for a stubborn old rebel. Progress? Jesse scoffed. Is that what you call stealing land for railroad payoffs? A flash of surprise crossed Blackwood's face. You know nothing. We know everything, Emma said, holding up the journal. Every crook deal, every forged document. How you and Judge Harmon and the bank conspired to steal land all across the county. The sheriff's face darkened. Hand that over, girl, now. I don't think so, Jesse said, stepping slightly forward. Those papers are headed for the governor's office and the St. Louis newspapers. Blackwood's laugh held no humor. You think people will believe anything brought forward by an outlaw? They'll believe evidence, no matter who delivers it, Jesse replied. And they'll believe her, a respectable farmer's daughter with nothing to gain but justice. Outside, a whistle pierced the night-cool signal that something was wrong. Your men won't help you now, Blackwood said with a smirk. I brought 10 deputies. Your gang is either running or captured by now. Jesse's expression didn't change. Then it's just us. What happened next unfolded in seconds. Blackwood fired first, his bullet grazing Jesse's shoulder. Jesse returned fire as Emma ducked behind the desk. 2 more shots echoed in the small room before Blackwood stumbled backward, blood blooming across his chest. You've killed me, he gasped, sliding down the wall. You did that yourself, Jesse replied coldly. The day you decided to sell a woman to cover a debt that wasn't even real. 2 days later, the First Bank of Clay County opened for business as usual. Manager Harlan Pierce greeted wealthy customers with obsequious smiles while turning away desperate farmers with cold indifference. At precisely 10 o'clock, the front doors burst open. Jesse James and 5 members of his gang entered, guns drawn but faces uncovered, a deliberate choice that sent whispers through the bank. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesse announced, please remain calm. We're not here for your money today. Pierce reached for the alarm bell, but Cole Younger's revolver discouraged further movement. Mr. Pierce, Jesse continued conversationally, I believe you've been expecting us, though perhaps not quite like this. What is the meaning of this? Pierce sputtered. Justice, Jesse replied simply. Something in short supply around here lately. From behind the gang members stepped Emma Wilson, now dressed in a proper blue dress, her head held high. A collective gasp rose from the customers who recognized her from the auction. Miss Wilson has some business to conclude with you, Mr. Pierce, Jesse said, concerning fraudulent loans against her father's property. Pierce's face paled. Whatever grievances you think you have should be addressed through proper legal channels. Emma stepped forward, placing Thomas Wilson's journal and loan documents on the counter. These are the proper channels, Mr. Pierce. My father's original loan agreements, alongside your forged versions. Nonsense, Pierce blustered, though his eyes darted nervously to the documents. Sheriff Blackwood won't be coming to your rescue, Jesse added. He had an unfortunate revelation last night. A murmur ran through the onlookers. What do you want? Pierce finally asked, his voice barely audible. First, you'll transfer the Wilson farm back to Emma, free and clear, Jesse instructed. Then you'll do the same for the Hendersons, the Claytons, and every other family on this list. He handed over a paper with 12 names. That's impossible. The bank would collapse. Perhaps it should, Emma said, her voice carrying through the bank. But we're offering you a choice, which is more than you gave my father. Jesse leaned across the counter. Choice 1. You make these transfers legally now, with witnesses. We leave copies of these documents with the newspaper and the governor, but without your name specifically mentioned. And choice 2? Pierce asked. We take everything in your vault, burn this bank to the ground, and make sure everyone knows. Exactly what you did. Jesse's smile never reached his eyes. Oh, and you joined Blackwood. Pierce looked around desperately, finding no sympathy. Many of the customers were reviewing the evidence with growing anger, recognizing similar tactics used against their own neighbors. This is extortion, Pierce protested weakly. No, sir, Emma corrected him. This is the reckoning my father always said would come for men who profit from others' misery. For 30 minutes, Pierce signed document after document, transferring properties back to their rightful owners. When finished, his hands shook so badly he could barely hold the pen. Ladies and gentlemen, Jesse addressed the stunned customers, I hope you'll bear witness to what happened here today. Not robbery, but restoration. As they prepared to leave, Emma faced the bank manager one last time. My father believed of man's word was his bond, Mr. Pierce. Remember that the next time you think to forge someone's name. Outside, a crowd had gathered, drawn by rumors spreading through town. Jesse helped Emma onto her horse, then mounted his own. Is it true? Someone called out. Are you giving the farms back? Emma held up the documents. Every last one. A cheer erupted from the crowd as Jesse tipped his hat. Tell them what really happened here today, he called. Tell them Jesse James came for justice, not gold. As they rode out of town, Emma felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. Her father's name was cleared, his land restored. But the road ahead remained uncertain and dangerous. The sunset painted the Missouri sky in shades of amber and crimson as Emma stood on the porch of her reclaimed farmhouse. 1 week had passed since the confrontation at the bank. News had spread like wildfire, Jesse James standing against corruption. A farmer's daughter reclaiming her birthright. The governor had dispatched investigators to Clay County. Pierce and Judge Harmon had fled in the night. Other banks across the state were suddenly reviewing their foreclosure practices. Fearing similar exposure, Emma heard the approaching hoofbeats before she saw the rider. Jesse James dismounted by the gate, looking more trail-worn than when she'd last seen him. You're still here, he observed, climbing the porch steps. I half expected you'd have sold this place and moved east by now. Emma shook her head. This land is Wilson land. I won't be driven from it twice. Jesse nodded, understanding. In his eyes, the newspapers are calling me a folk hero again. Quite a change from murderous bandit. Are you? A hero? No, Jesse said simply. Just a man who remembers what it's like to lose everything to men in fine suits who never worked the soil. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunset deepen. They'll come for you, Emma finally said. The Pinkertons won't stop because of one good deed. No, they won't. Jesse turned to face her. I'm leaving Missouri tomorrow, heading west for a while. Emma felt an unexpected pang of loss. Will you rob banks along the way? Jesse smiled faintly. Some banks deserve robbing. And others deserve a chance to do right, Emma countered. What happened here, it could happen elsewhere. Other farmers, other corrupt officials. What exactly are you suggesting, Miss Wilson? Emma met his gaze steadily. That perhaps Jesse James could find a better legacy than just being an outlaw. Or a corpse on some undertaker's table. You're proposing I become some kind of avenging angel for cheated farmers? Jesse laughed, though not unkindly. I'm proposing you consider that your notoriety could serve a purpose beyond just survival. Or wealth. Jesse studied her with newfound respect. Thomas Wilson's daughter indeed. He always could see past the horizon. From his pocket, Jesse produced a folded paper. This came from a farmer in Nebraska. Similar story: forged loans, corrupt officials. I thought perhaps you might want to look into it. Emma took the paper, surprise evident in her expression. Me? I'm no outlaw. No, but you are the daughter of Thomas Wilson, with a sharp mind and first-hand knowledge of how these schemes work. Jesse gestured to the farmhouse. You have neighbors who watch over your land. You have means now. The proposition hung in the air between them, an unexpected crossroads for a woman who just weeks ago had stood on an auction block. I can't shoot like you, Emma said after a long moment. Good, Jesse replied seriously. The gun should always be the last resort, not the first. But you have something more valuable: legitimacy. People will listen to Emma Wilson in ways they never would to Jesse James. As darkness fell, they talked of possibilities of a network of informants, of evidence gathering, of exposing corruption from within the system while Jesse worked from outside it. Different approaches toward the same justice. By morning, decisions had been made. Emma would travel to Nebraska, ostensibly to visit a cousin, but carrying Thomas Wilson's journal as a template for what to look for. Jesse would continue west, but with purpose beyond mere flight. As Jesse mounted his horse at dawn, Emma handed him a small package. What's this? He asked. Pages from my father's journal, his thoughts on justice, on standing against tyranny. He wrote them during the war. Emma's eyes held a quiet strength. A reminder that even in the darkest times, there are principles worth upholding. Jesse tucked the package inside his coat, close to his heart. Until our paths cross again, Miss Wilson. They will, she said with certainty. There's too much work to be done for them not to. As Jesse James rode away, Emma Wilson stood watching from land that was once again hers. Behind her lay the graves of her parents, their memory honored. Before her stretched a future she never could have imagined, one where a woman's voice might carry as much weight as an outlaw's gun in the fight for justice on the American frontier. Neither knew exactly where this new path would lead, but both understood that some choices, once made, forever alter the course of one's life and perhaps, in small ways, the course of history itself.